Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a visit with U.S. Senator Jeff Flake. We'll discuss the top issues of the day, including inaction on immigration reform and yet another attempt to stop an Indian casino in the West Valley. That's next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The surge of unaccompanied children from Central America has refocused the national spotlight on illegal immigration, and yet comprehensive immigration reform remains elusive, with little apparent chance of significant changes happening anytime soon. Here to talk about that and other federal issues impacting Arizona is U.S. Senator from Arizona, Jeff Flake. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. Thank you. Before we get started here, your thoughts on the passing of State Senator Chester Crandall?
You know, it's really a blow. It's a blow to the state, a blow to northern Arizona. You know, there are too few members who really represent rural Arizona these days, and he did. And so it's going to be felt. It really is.
Okay, let's get now to happenings back there in Washington. I've already heard the critics noting the irony of what they describe as the least productive Congress in history taking a vacation. What is going on back there?
You know, it's tremendously frustrating to be, particularly in the Senate, which is the most deliberative body in the world, with unlimited debate, unlimited amendments, and we can't even bring anything to the floor. It's been a very frustrating experience.
The president wanting a few $1 billion emergency funding for the border. Where do you stand on that, and where do you think the American public stands on that?
Well, I think it is a genuine emergency and a genuine crisis, and I think the president and the administration did need additional monies. I don't think they needed the $3.7 billion that was asked for. Having said that, we did need additional money. It was an emergency, and I was disappointed that we couldn't put together a package before the break. We'll need to do so when we get back there in September.
As far as the package is concerned, should that package include amendments or just somehow changes to that human trafficking law, the 2008
Yes.
Human Trafficking Law?
Yes, the president asked for that initially. He backed off somewhat. The supplemental he put to Congress didn't include any of those changes, but he needs them, he wants them, and we should give them to him.
Do you think that somewhere lost in the fog where lawmakers are, these are refugees, these are folks looking for safe haven, or has that now become a differing definition?
Well, I think there are genuine cases of persecution, people who should be granted asylum. Senator McCain and I put forward legislation saying that ought to happen in their home country. We ought to allow the embassies, the consulates in those countries to actually accept those claims or to judge those claims. And so those genuine cases of asylum, they need not make that dangerous trip north. But for those who come here, some will have a genuine claim, some won't. And you need a process that works quickly, where you don't have to place these kids with sponsors with court dates 2 years from now.
Right.
And then you're simply aiding the smugglers, because they're able to go back and say, look, a child went across the border, it's been placed with a family member, all is good, and then the situation just perpetuates.
But you would agree that the country does have a moral obligation to at least fund the current law and make changes when possible.
Oh yes, but the current law, we can also expedite this process. We need to fund, have more judges, for example, to hear these cases more quickly. Mm-hmm. That will cost more, because the longer you hold these kids in detention, the more it costs. It's cheaper to actually place them with a sponsor, because then there's no financial responsibility for the federal government. But having done that, you're just inviting more to come. And so it's a bit of a paradox. You will have to spend some money to detain, but you'll solve the crisis for the long term.
As far as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, I know there are the critics of that program. We can get into a little bit of that, how it was implemented, right. But should it be defunded? There's talk of that. That is the only way Congress can maybe set their will. Do you agree to that?
No, I didn't agree with the president moving ahead, but to put this in place and to have those kids in a situation where they're yanked back and forth, where they're here legally, they're able to attend schools or find work, and then they're not going back and forth. That's not a good situation. I believe that the president should have worked with the Congress and found a permanent solution. But he didn't. It's been confusing to others, and the smugglers and cartels have preyed on that confusion and have basically told parents in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, hey, you give your child to us, we'll get them across and they'll be able to stay. And it's not a good or humane situation for anyone. You
said that you would hope that the president would work with Congress. There are some who see the president trying to work with Congress in his own way, and Congress just, at least Republicans in Congress, just saying no to everything. Your response? I think there are some who will just say no to everything, but there are a good number of Republicans who want to find a solution to this. We passed a bill out of the Senate. There are a number of people in the House, Republicans and Democrats, trying to find a solution. The problem with the president taking executive action, his authority only goes so far. He can't create a path to citizenship, for example, or do any of that. He doesn't pretend that he can. And so as long as you have a situation where the president can only take temporary steps, it's not a good one. He ought to be patient and work with Congress. And the problem is when the president takes unilateral action like this, it breeds distrust in the Congress. And then people in the House of Representatives say, see, it doesn't matter what we do because the president will just ignore it anyway. There are some in the House of Representatives who think that the Dreamers, the kids that were obviously born there in Mexico mostly, but raised for their entire lives here, should immediately be deported. That was again debated here right before a vacation. I know it's the House and it's not the Senate, but your thoughts on immediately deporting Dreamers? I just don't think it's rational or feasible or advisable. I've long felt that we ought to, I've been supportive of the DREAM Act. It was included in legislation I sponsored in the House. It was included in the legislation we did in the Senate. So I just don't agree with that sentiment. Do you think that what's happening now with the Central American refugees and DACA, the Deferred Action Program, and immigration, should all of those things be linked? I think that this package that the president asked for, we ought to deal with this immediate crisis and not try to link everything else to it, because there is an immediate crisis. There's no way you can do the whole thing in a month or in a couple of weeks like we need to. But I hope that we return to the broader debate on immigration. I hope that if Republicans are fortunate to take the Senate this fall, then we come back in January and get to work on a package. It'll probably look different than the Senate bill. It'll probably be piecemeal like the House wanted to do. That's fine. Let's sequence it in a way that we can pass this broad-based reform. You mentioned that the Senate immigration bill that you, of course, are associated very closely with. What the heck happened to that? What's going on with that? We passed it last June. It's been over a year now. We had hoped that the House would take it up, and none of us expected the House to accept it as it was. I hope that the House improves on several provisions. There were very good border provisions in that bill. I hope that the House would improve on the guest worker plans to expand them, make them bigger. But the House, for one reason or another, just hasn't seen fit to take it up. And, it's unfortunate. I was going to say, from a distance, obviously looking from the Senate, the critics are saying that the votes are there, that the Speaker simply will not take the vote. I mean, that has to be frustrating as well. I think the votes are there, and they were very close. We were told before the Eric Cantor loss, and that spooked a lot of Republicans in tight primary races. And unfortunately, I think that stalled it. And you mentioned if Senate control goes back to the Republicans, you'd like to see this readdressed. If it goes back to Republicans, will it be readdressed? Because that would suggest that you may not have that majority for what you had passed previously come to fruition again. I think we will. I mean, we had a big margin. We had 68 votes in the Senate for the so-called Gang of Eight bill. Like I said, it won't be the same. It'll be more emphasis in one place or another. That's fine, but I do believe the votes are there. And I think, frankly, they'll be there in the House as well. I think as a Republican, obviously there are first and foremost substantive policy reasons to deal with this issue. If you want to talk politics, I think it's going to be difficult for Republicans to win, nationally if we don't deal with this issue forthrightly. So you see that we read about this all the time, that this is a major, could be a major impact on the future of the Republican Party. You agree with that, huh?
Yes, I do. And it's not just that the Republicans need to appeal to a growing demographic, Hispanics in particular. That's important, but even more so, I think that that people in general, whatever race or creed, people expect a governing party, a serious national party, to deal rationally with issues and to have solutions. And I think we haven't exactly had that in the past few years.
You mentioned as well that perhaps going in stages would be the better idea. I know Senator Rubio thinks progressing in stages is the only way to get something done. Do you agree with that now?
I believe the House is certainly set on going that direction, and that's fine. We can do that. You can sequence these steps in a way that you can still wind up with broad-based reform, but do it sequentially.
There's always a threat, though, of slow footing it to where nothing eventually happens.
Sure, but it's legislating. You just got to do it.
Representatives, again, I keep going back to the House because that's where the fireworks just seem to be happening from the House. But again, from a distance, we got Representative Steve King. We got other congressmen now out there starting to talk about the I word, impeachment. What do you make of that?
Very little. There are very few actually talking about it. Certainly not me. I think the other side kind of plays it up because it's to their political advantage, but no serious Republicans are talking about it.
So again, if Representative King says impeach the president, if he goes ahead again and offers these deferment of deportations with another executive order, I know there's a lawsuit with the Speaker. You think that's what, politics making noise in an election season? Or?
I do. I think that the best we can do as Republicans, and our best option is to do well in November, and I think we will.
Do you think, and last thing on immigration, we're talking a lot about it, but it seems like it's topic A for everyone. When it comes to securing the border, when it comes to amnesty, do you think those in the Republican Party see those words defined very differently? And if so, how do you get coalition here?
No, I think that Republicans believe in the rule of law. We want to get back to the rule of law, and you don't have it when you have some 11 million people who are living here in the shadows or not complying with the law. We need to get back to it, and we also need a secure border. And I think we need to do all of that. Obviously, it's a tough and complex situation, but sometimes the amnesty word gets thrown around where it shouldn't be thrown around. But in the end, I think as Republicans, we want to return to the rule of law and actually also deal with the issues of the economy and what we need moving ahead, and also the horrible humanitarian situation that we currently have on the border. Those things need to be addressed as well.
Last question on this. Do you think Republicans are starting to move in that direction?
I think we have been over the past year. I think we were very close in the House to having a package that we could have dealt with the Senate and sent a bill to the President. So, yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction.
You've introduced a new bill to stop new casinos in the Metro Phoenix area. Why?
Well, I think that, and you can talk to Senator McCain about this. He was there in the Congress when IGRA, or the Indian Gaming Act, was passed, and he will tell you that it just wasn't contemplated at that time that you would have the tribes actually put a casino in a non-contiguous part away from the reservation in the middle of a city, and that's what's going on in Glendale. So we've introduced legislation to block that.
Despite court rulings, despite Department of Interior, I know the Ninth Circuit still has to make a final ruling, but I think we kind of know what direction they're going. Supreme Court in Michigan kind of made a ruling that kind of shows where they're looking. Despite all that, do you think this is what people in the West Valley want?
It may be, and the city council didn't want it before. Now the city council, as a council, does. I think the mayor is still opposed. Other communities in the East Valley and elsewhere are concerned at the precedent that this sets. So we felt it was important to introduce this legislation.
So again, despite the fact that maybe some folks in the West Valley see jobs, they see building of different industries and businesses maybe around this, a good thing for the economy out there, you say not so fast.
Not so fast.
All right. That's it, huh?
Well, like I say, there are other communities concerned about this, and we think that we ought to follow the law here. And there are questions still, some courts still have to consider this, and we'll see where it goes.
Last question on this. Where does the Indian Gaming Compact go if this goes through?
Well, that's another question. I mean, it's all tied together, and I can tell you when these laws were passed, I don't believe that this was contemplated. This kind of action where a tribe will actually purchase land far away from their own land and put a casino there. It just seems to be not consistent with the law.
The VA reform bill, tell us what went into this, what does it do, how important is it, especially for veterans here in Arizona?
Extremely important, and this is one area where the Congress came together and actually moved legislation pretty quickly. It was important that veterans be given a choice. For those that have waited for care or will wait for care and aren't given a satisfactory response, for them to be able to choose an option outside of the VA. And that's what this legislation does. Also for those who live a long way from a clinic or hospital, to be able to access care close to them. That's important. It's a big deal for a lot of veterans, and that's provided for in this legislation and funded.
And indeed, 40 miles, I think, away from the nearest VA facility allows for that choice. And if you've been waiting 30 days for an appointment, allows for that choice.
Correct.
Not a heck of a lot of debate on that?
You know, there is, and there were a lot of people who swallowed hard to allow this to happen, but we thought it was important, and I think we owe it to the veterans to make sure they get the care they deserve.
Among those that were opposed, I think Senators Sessions and Coburn, concerned about the cost. I don't know, we're talking $16.3 billion, I think, something along those lines.
That is a concern. The $10 billion is associated with the choice that some will be able to make. Mm-hmm. But when you think about that, is the veterans' care that bad that many veterans will flee the VA? If that's the case, and we have a bigger problem than we've admitted. So I frankly don't think that the cost will be as high as they believe it will be. I think the Veterans Administration will respond. Competition and accountability tends to do that. So I think the cost will be lower than is in the bill, but it is concerning, certainly.
And some that were, the few senators, and these were Republicans, and they were concerned mostly about the cost. They also said, why not wait for the new secretary to get in there, make those changes, then figure out what needs to be done, how much it's going to cost, move ahead.
There are other parts of that bill that the new head, which was voted on unanimously by the Senate, where he needed the hiring and firing abilities that were provided for in the law. And I don't care who you put in that position. If they don't have authority to hire and fire, you're not going to clean up the system. And so that was part of the legislation as well. It was important to give him that. But also to have the relief valve of allowing veterans to go elsewhere for care was important as well. Because bureaucracies, unless there's some relief valve, unless there's some choice that people have to go outside, just are very rarely fixed. And so I think we needed all of it.
And some of the major headlines regarding the VA problems starting right here in Phoenix, ground zero for that. These wait time manipulations and those sorts of things, does this bill specifically address that? I know it gives him the hiring and firing power, but does it address those kinds of things, better accountability, that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, you can never write into law every eventuality and what some people will do, but I think what was done here was contrary to the law. And that will work its way through, and those who need to be held accountable will be held accountable.
Additional workers involved here in this money as well?
I'm sorry, additional
VA workers?
Yes, certainly. I think when you have the wait times that we're experiencing, it's going to require new personnel, more personnel.
Now, I haven't seen this particular ad, and I guess it ran very shortly here in Arizona, but it was an ad regarding gun restrictions. This is pushed by Michael Bloomberg, and I think you and a few other senators were targeted on this. I don't know how much the target was, but the idea of expanding restrictions on handgun purchases. Talk to us about this issue. This is another one of these issues that gets people very fired up. Yeah. Your position on this, and why do you think they targeted you?
Well, you know, I don't know. I was the target last year of a lot of money that was spent on this issue. I've felt for a long time that we need to strengthen our background check system, particularly as it regards those with mental illness. We have a national registry, but too often folks with mental illness are not put as part of that registry. Some states do a better job than others. And so I've introduced legislation long ago with a few other senators on a bipartisan basis to make that system better. And so I guess because I've said that we ought to strengthen the background check system, some people have felt, well, then Jeff will probably vote for a universal background check system that is more than I think any of us have contemplated. So, I don't know. I guess that's why they run ads.
And I know that the idea is to look at abusive dating partners, the latest formation of this. Abusive dating partners, people under restraining orders, convicted stalkers, these sorts of things, not to be able to buy, not to be able to own guns. What do you think of that idea?
Well, the devil's in the details on all of this, and states have very different definitions of stalking, for example, and restraining orders. Right now, I believe that legislation would include somebody with a temporary restraining order. Now, somebody can put a temporary restraining order on somebody without any due process. I think a woman somewhere in the country put a temporary restraining order on David Letterman because she felt that he was stalking her somehow, or something crazy like that. And to deny somebody their rights when there's no due process involved is a dangerous territory. And so the legislation needs a lot more thorough scrubbing than it's gotten so far.
Is there a way, though, to get more due process involved in something like that?
Perhaps. We'll have to see what comes forward.
You know, much of what we talked about today and much of what we actually talked about in the introduction is the inaction of Congress on immigration, on other aspects as well. What is going on back there? Because from here, it just sounds like a bunch of fussing and fighting. And I mean, I've heard "do nothing Congress" numerous times. Is that what is going on back there?
It feels like that sometimes. But at the root of it, if you want to know what's at the root of it, at least in the Senate, is the inability or unwillingness of the Senate majority to subject their members to tough votes. In an election year in particular. I mean, the Senate is, a different creature than the House. The rules are different, the customs and precedents. And basically with a 6-year term as a senator, you have the benefit of a 6-year term. And I can't tell you how nice it is to drive around town and not see my own signs on corners in an even-numbered year. But with that luxury, I guess, of a 6-year term comes a responsibility to take tough votes. Votes that are tough to explain. Some are gotcha votes that a 30-second ad can be made out of. And traditionally, I mean, that's always been the case, but you have 6 years to explain it. And you ought to take those tough votes. And right now, the Senate majority is not willing to take those tough votes. And so the majority leader, when legislation comes to the floor, he will, what's called, fill the tree, basically prevent any Republican amendments from being attached to the bill. And then Republicans will retaliate by saying, we won't grant cloture or allow the bill to proceed, which is a 60-vote requirement, unless we get amendments on the bill. And so both sides go like this, and ultimately nothing comes to the floor, or very little. It's very frustrating. But like I said, at its root is the unwillingness to take tough votes.
Again, though, it cannot be argued that why take the tough votes when instead of needing 51, you now need 60. I think some people are still confused by that. Since when did the filibuster become part of the everyday voting pattern? You
know, traditionally it wasn't, but it was because the chairman of the committee where the bill would come from and the ranking minority member would sit down with other members and say, what amendments do you have? And then we're going to schedule 3 days for the bill on the floor. And you use the clock in the Senate to basically regulate how many amendments come forward. And that's how you do business. That's kind of how you do it in the House as well. I mean, having been in the House, I offered a lot of amendments in the House. I have the record of futility on a lot of these amendments. But I was allowed to do so, and we should be allowed to do so in the Senate. Typically, you haven't invoked the 60-vote threshold, unless you absolutely had to.
Right.
And it rarely was because amendments were allowed. Take, for example, the Panama Canal Treaty. Tough votes taken there. I think there were some 200 plus amendments that were offered and dealt with on the Senate floor for one bill.
Right.
And important legislation needs to be vetted that way. And you just understand, you're going to be taking some votes that are tough to explain, but you got 6 years to do it. And I hope that we can get back to that.
All right. I hope we can have you back on the show. Good to see you again.
You too.
And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thanks so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.